Do you ever feel like you might work too much, or that you might let down your friends and family because you're spending so much time in the thing that you love, or the thing that should bring you a lot of energy and a lot of joy, and it's something that you pour so much energy into because you see value in it? Hi, my name is Keegan Hipgrave. Welcome to the Keegan and Company podcast. And in today's episode, we're going to be diving into the psychology of toxic productivity. This is a theme, a topic that has come to light over the last probably couple of weeks for me. Definitely, I think it can be such a topical conversation in today's world with the rise of hustle culture, the rise of social media, the thing of always comparing ourselves to other people. In this episode, I really want to break down what toxic productivity is, how it shows up, because I think a lot of the times it can just go unnoticed because we do these things and everything that we're pouring our energy into. Typically, we really do love these things. But I want to talk about how it can show up, and then what are the best things that we can do to help, overcome the burnout, overcome the isolation, overcome all these really negative things that we can see. So let's define it. Toxic productivity. It's the compulsive need to always be doing, achieving, or optimizing to the point where it stops serving your life and it starts consuming it. I think there's probably a large proportion of people who want to be more productive. We spend so much time on social media, or we get stuck in the never-ending loop of watching Netflix, and we're kind of just roaming around life. This episode is not for you. This episode is for the people who can get stuck in doing, in constantly doing, and never feeling like it's enough or we're enough. There is a difference between healthy productivity and toxic productivity. Healthy productivity has a direction. When you're working hard towards something that's meaningful, but when you step away, you can actually step away from it. I think back in the day, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, well before my time, but from what I hear, we kind of go to work from 9 to 5, we check in, and then we're able to check out. We can step away from that, and we can spend time with our friends and spend time with our families and do the things, outside of work. But I think now, since the early 2000s, we've seen such a rise in hustle culture, and almost like passion projects and side projects have turned into full-time jobs outside of our own working hours. Or we might be part-time athletes or corporate athletes who work a full-time job but are training for a marathon or an Ironman, or all these incredible things, but can take up so much more time. So toxic productivity has no off switch. The goal isn't fulfillment. The goal is the feeling of doing. Rest feels wrong. Stillness feels dangerous, and enough never arrives. I think this whole topic of conversation has come up after probably 3 different podcasts we've done. The first one was with Dr. Megan Lee, a positive psychologist, and we did a deep dive into the rise of the whimsical era. So how a lot of people are leaning into more, gardening and farmers markets because they want to get away from their phones, and they want to get away from social media and this ideal of comparison. And it kind of weaved into us just being so busy all the time, and it made me reflect a lot. I then did a podcast actually this morning with Jackie Bell, who is very similar to me in the sense where she always feels like she has to be going. She always has to feel like she's been doing. Jackie Bell is an ultra marathon runner who was the youngest girl to run a multi-stage ultra marathon on every single continent in the world, just when she was 23 years old. And so she does these keynotes, she does these work with brands, and she constantly feels the need to go. Just this morning, we were doing this conversation, and I actually got quite emotional in the conversation because I was very similar in the sense of we're constantly going, but we neglect our family and we can neglect our friends. And typically when we're doing something that we love so much, these things by no means of negativity or hatred towards these people just falls off because life gets so busy. And then the third and final podcast which is what I really want to talk about, was a podcast we did with Grace Grove. Grace Grove is a doctor. She's a content creator. She's a really incredible runner. She's, I think, going for like a sub 3 hour or sub 3 hour 15 marathon in London. So she's a really high operator. And last year, she talked about, I asked her about 2025. I asked her about last year and how she felt it went, because she had so much incredible opportunities come to her. She has all these brand deals coming in, and she was her first year out in the world as a doctor, and she was doing all this training. I said, how was it for you? And she's like, to be honest, it was completely overwhelming. I had way too much on my plate. I said yes to everything because I had so many opportunities, but I neglected my loved ones. I neglected the people who I should be spending all my time with, or I should be spending a large chunk of my time with, but I didn't get to have that because I was just out doing. She's like, to be honest, I actually felt quite lonely and quite isolated. And I ended up writing this whole Substack, which I actually do want to read to you. When I read this to my partner, we were on the Sunshine Coast, and I just finished writing the draft, and I read it to her. She just started crying. I said, why? I was like, why? I was like, what? I was like, I'm not that good of a writer. I was like, why is this so emotional? And she said, you work. She's like, you work so much. You work so much. And just for context, my partner's pregnant, we've got a baby coming into the world, and we're trying to grow this podcast, and we've got a lot of travel coming up. And so we're trying to prep for that. And she's like, you work so much, but the way you wrote the article, it kind of seems like all you really want to do is spend time with like your friends, your family, and then your soon-to-be daughter that's coming into the world. I was like, yeah, well, that's the whole point. The whole point is for me, because I'm working so hard, is so I can be able to spend time with you guys. She's like, it's just really beautiful how it was written, or how it resonated with her. So maybe there's something in here that you might get out of, or maybe you might see some of this in a friend that you might want to send it to. Here it goes. Grace Grove sat across from me and said something I hadn't been able to shake. Grace is a doctor, a runner, a content creator, and by most measures, someone who has it all figured out by doing things really well. But when I asked her about 2025, she didn't talk about what she achieved. She talked about what it cost her. She said yes to everything: High Rocks Worlds, marathon training, first year as a doctor, traveling, brands, content. All of it stacked up on top of each other. And when I asked her how it went, she said she burnt out completely. But here's the thing that really got me. She didn't say the hardest part was the fatigue or missing the PB or the pressure of the work. She said the hardest part was realizing she hadn't shown up for the people she loves the way she wanted to. Toxic productivity isn't about doing too much. It's about spreading yourself too thin that the people and the things you care about get the worst version of you, the leftover version, the 60% version. She said, there's little of you left to give to the people around you, said Grace. And I was like, yeah, that's it. That's the thing nobody talks about. We romanticize being busy. We wear exhaustion like a badge. We fill every gap in our calendar and call it being productive. But productive at what cost? Grace did this vision exercise at the LSKD event last year, eyes closed, guided through what her life would look like in 10 years. She cried because none of the things she'd been stressing about were in that picture. It was all the people. She'd be pouring herself into everything except what actually mattered. So in 2026 for Grace, 2026 for Grace looks different. 4 brands instead of 10, one race at a time, saying no to the things so she can actually say yes properly to the things that count. Like sitting on a couch with her fiance, Zach, for 2 hours with a coffee and nowhere to be. That's not laziness. That's the whole point. And then I finished saying, so here's a question that I'll leave with you. If you close your eyes right now and pictured your life in 10 years from now, what is actually in the picture? And that's where your energy is going to go today. It's so funny, hey? It's like we spend so much time fussing about these little things, fussing about getting that project done or getting that training session in. And forever I've been preaching about do the thing you love. Like if you do the thing you love, you'll never work a day in your life. But in fact, the research shows that when you work on something that you love, the people who work on something they love experience burnout more than anyone else because they will work through all the challenges, they'll work through all the stress relentlessly to be able to get that thing done. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that 100% of the time. What I'm saying is when it starts to impact your life negatively, that's probably a time when to reassess. And I think that exercise that Grace did at the LSKD event is really beautiful because when you close your eyes and you can sit there and picture your life in 10 years' time, and you think about, oh, what are the things that are actually in my life? Like I think of my partner, I think about my parents, I think about my family, I think about my partner, my little baby that's on the way. Yeah, I don't respectfully to you guys that are listening, I don't think about when's the next podcast going to be released. I love this thing. I love my podcast and I love the conversations that we can have on this podcast. But when you dive into the nitty-gritty of what actually matters, I think it's our loved ones. That was my latest realization, and it's been stuck with me ever since. Um, and so I alluded to it before. When is the time to draw the line? And this is kind of your action items or your homework or your takeaway, I guess, is when you feel like it is starting to impact your life. So if you're a little bit older and you've got family, you've got kids, and you might be spending way too much time away from work, start putting those little things in place, whether it's like a little check-in. And I get it, like the time that we're living in now with the cost of living and how much we do have to work just to put food on the table is so stressful beyond anyone can ever imagine. I feel with you. I sympathize with you. There are things that you can do. You can check in your lunchtime, whether it's a text message or a voice note, spending time with them, actually being there, getting off our phones, putting our phones in another room. I think a lot of the times we think that our shit is all absorbing and it can be all absorbing. But when we zoom out and put the perspective into place, I think that's really important. And then if you're younger and you're in a time or a season to grind it out, of course, like grind it out. But when it starts to impact your ability to spend time with your friends and family, or even just your own mental state, you might be feeling like low energy levels, or you can't be present with those people you love. That's the time when it's to reassess. And also, like the research has also shown that when you step away from your task, you can't be productive all the time. But when you step away from the task and you let yourself recover, you're actually more likely to produce a way higher quality of work. You're way more likely to be way more creative and actually just do a better job at what you're supposed to do. That our brain is this really incredible mechanism, but it needs time to rest and actually download what we're doing. And so when you're doing it and you can take a step away, it's actually probably one of the most beneficial things that you can do. Anyway, I hope this resonated with you. This is definitely such a huge part of what I'm thinking about at the moment. I think these psychology of episodes are really great to just flesh out things that are just super top of mind, and kind of bring in a bit of the literature around it on what actually helps us. So if you did enjoy this episode, or if you feel like this episode might resonate with someone, you might have that friend that might need to hear it. I know I've had a few podcasts where I'll send it to a friend just because I think it might resonate with them. Share it along. We encourage that, and we're trying to promote messages of positive mental health. And if it's one episode that you can take away and make a few notes on and actually implement in your life, that's the dream. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.